Welcome to another episode of the Empowered Half Hour. Today's guest just makes my heart so happy. I have with me Teresa Rand, who is a friend and colleague out in the influencer world. I actually met her podcasting, and I had written Harness Your Inner CEO. She read it, interviewed me, and I think we just became like instant friends. So I'm really excited to have her on the podcast today because she's so inspirational. I just enjoy everything that she has to say from the perspectives and who she is as a person. So I hope you enjoy her as much as I do. Teresa, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I am so excited to be here. Our paths just continually cross, and I had read your book, and I still say it's the best business book I read in 2022, when it was 2022. And of course you came, I do a women's leadership conference and immediately asked you to come and be my keynote speaker. And now here we are again.
Yes, again.
So much in common. And you're right. We just quickly became friends from the second we met. So good energy. Good energy attracts good energy.
That's right. So I want to do your bio some justice. I'm going to take a pause. I'm going to read this so the listeners can get to know you and your background a little bit more. And then we're going to dive right into the interview. All right. Here we go. Teresa is passionate about helping leaders achieve their dreams, to climb the career ladder, earn their seat at the C-suite, and achieve inclusive leadership in the workforce. She believes that female leaders are responsible for reaching down the career ladder and helping other women advance in their careers. As a former CEO, Teresa managed up to 35 million and 1,000 plus employees. Through public speaking and client coaching, she inspires women to be their best selves. As the daughter of a working mom in the 1970s, Teresa is keenly aware of the distance women have to come towards workforce equality and how much further there is to go. Teresa is the founder of Boss Lady Community and the Boss Lady podcast that focuses on women's empowerment, gender equality, and women issues. Teresa holds a certification in women's leadership from Cornell University and a certificate in diversity, equality, and inclusion in the workplace from the University of South Florida Mama College of Business. Teresa holds a BS in Business Administration from Jacksonville University, is a certified Gallup Strengths and DISC Codebreaker coach, a John Maxwell, I did not know this about you, certified speaker, trainer, and coach, and e-certified virtual presenter, and National Speakers Academy graduate and member. Wow, Teresa, you have so much in your background. There's so much that I could chew on there. But one of the things that I really liked about your bio is so many things. But as I think about where women have come today, you mentioned in your bio that you come from a mother who was working in the 70s. And I know that you were a working mom. And that is something that we've really connected with, because I think that in our leadership roles, we have helped break the ceiling or helped pave the path, maybe is a better word, for the women that are coming before us. I know that both of us have sacrificed our momhood for our careers to a certain degree. And I just want to open up and talk about that. And then I want to get into the regular interview questions, but that's just something near and dear to my heart. And I know it is to yours as well. So,
yeah, Becca, there's no better topic than motherhood and careerhood. One of the topics I'm the most asked to speak on at companies or anything else is this whole work-life balance thing. And you talk about in your book, because it can end in burnout.
Yes.
Because we as women think we have to have this perfect work and perfect home life. And what I found in my career is that it just wasn't possible to have it all at once. I had a great career, I have great kids, but sometimes things went really well at work and all hell broke loose at home. And then sometimes all hell broke loose at home. Or the other way around. I said that backwards, but the other way around. Those days when I can remember that everything was perfect at home and everything was perfect at work are few and far between. You know, as a single mom, and I was married, went to work, got a divorce, going through a divorce and trying to work with kids at home. It's just a lot. And you can't bring that, or you should not bring that to work, especially if you're customer facing, because you got to put on a happy face. So you learn to compartmentalize, and that can be good, but it can also be detrimental to your mental health if you're not careful. 100%. So I like to tell people that Superwoman is a freaking myth. There is no such thing except in the movies and the comic books. So let's give ourselves some grace.
I love that. And I had a friend of mine share something that I found very moving, and I think that you will too. We were just in conversation, and I had my kids very young, and we're near the same age when she just decided to have children a few years ago. So her children are in grade school and then mine are college. So that's how far apart we are. But she watched me raise my kids in the world that you're describing and said to me, she's like, I am so grateful for women like you and the women that came before us. And I was like, what are you talking about? She's like, here I am able to have the freedom at work to go to my kids' school programs, to be a working mom without so much judgment. And she's like, I remember when your kids were in daycare and you were getting those fever phone calls. You had 3 of them in 1 month and you almost got fired.
That's right. You had to hide it.
Yes.
You had to not talk about it. You had to not be vocal about where you're going and what you were doing and work. You had to work your children's life around work, not your work around your children.
Yeah. And so I feel really proud that here we are able to say that hopefully our voice within the corporations that we worked for, and now as coaches and consultants working with corporations, I'm hoping that we get a chance to reflect back and say our voice had something to do with that.
Absolutely. And then, of course, my mother's generation, as you read in my bio, was in the 70s. She was about the only lady in the block, the only woman on our block. Everybody else stayed home. And it was a real stigma. And she was a great role model in managing all that. And boy, can she tell some stories.
We should have your mom on the podcast.
My podcast. I had her on Mother's Day one year, and I didn't even get half the stories, but she can tell some stories about her work life.
I bet you she could.
Very.
So let's dive into the core of the interview. In your bio, you had said that you were a former CEO, and now you have retired from that and launched your own coaching and consulting business. Let's get into the backstory of that. How did that happen, and why did you go that path?
Becca, I had worked for the same organization for 30 years. I worked for YMCA. I started in a small independent Y in Georgia, moved to a larger Y in Jacksonville, and then ultimately became a CEO at my Y in Volusia County, which is in Central Florida. So I had a great career, and talk about moms and jobs. The Y was a perfect job for a mom, especially early on when my kids were in school, because the Y bus picked them up and brought them to Y childcare. And childcare was like $15 a month per child. So instead of $350. So it was a great career. But after 30 years in 3 different associations, I just decided I was done. I just had a different frame of mind and decided raising money is hard. It's very rewarding, but it was 90% of what I did in my last 10 years was raise money, and I was good at it, but it's a lot of work. And I just got, I don't know that I'd use the word burnt out, but I got tired. And there's a little difference, I think, in those two. I have a retirement with the Y after 30 years. I have a good retirement. I was at the age where I could draw my retirement. So that was kind of a level that didn't make it such a bad risk, or such a high risk, I should say, to jump out, even though it still took me 2 years. From the day I said to a group of women, I was at a retreat with 13 other women, I'll never forget it. And we were journaling. We had a facilitator and we had journal time. And I came back to the group and said, I'm going to retire. I was crying. I was like, I don't know where this came from. And I went back home and set a plan in motion because I knew I still wanted to work. Like you, I was young when I had my kids, so they're all out of the house, I have grandkids. So I still wanted to work, but I hired a business coach and I said, I don't want a board of directors. I don't want to work for anybody, and I don't want any employees. She said, okay, well, that narrows it down. But we developed a business out of that with those parameters. But it took me 2 years. It wasn't an overnight thing.
Sure. That leads me into my next question, and maybe we can take the time to answer it from both perspectives, because I love that you have such wisdom coming from your corporate career, but I also want to share some of what you're doing now. So my question is, what did you have to overcome? And I think that maybe if you can share one big thing you had to overcome in your CEO career at the Y, and then if you could share something you've had to overcome in starting your own business, I think both of those would land well for the listeners.
And you know what? There's one answer to both of those.
That's even better.
Confidence in myself. It was confidence that I could do the job. I often took promotions where I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know why they think I can do this job. Thankfully, I didn't say that out loud during the interview. I came across very confident. And of course, now we have a name for it, imposter syndrome. But through about half of my career, I had not finished college. I put myself back through college when my youngest child went to school. So it took me 7 years, but I finally got my bachelor's in business administration. So I was working, going to school, and this was pre-online. I had to go 2 nights a week and sit my butt in class from 6 to 10. Thank God I had the best neighbors and village helping with the kids. But that not having that college degree at the regular college age always has been something in my own mind that I've said I'm not smart enough. And I now know, and I think I knew then, I think I'm smarter because I went to school when I really was interested in learning, as opposed to 18 when that was what I was supposed to do. So there's a lot of things that I've learned, but it was always having enough confidence to know I could do what I had said I could do. And when I started my own business, the first thing I told my coach that I hired is, I've worked for a nonprofit for 30 years. I don't know that I have any transferable skills. And of course, she was like, surely you're kidding me. The only difference between managing 1,000 employees at a $30 million Y and 1,000 employees at a corporation is you don't pay taxes. It's still the same. So getting other people to help me see what maybe I couldn't see for myself for being in the woods.
I love that so much. And so I am going to take that and ask another question before we change the perspective a little bit. I think with women, and there's tons of statistics available, but women are less likely to go for a promotion until they're 90% ready. And yep. I love that you went there because I feel like there's still a lot of women, whether they're an entrepreneur or whether they're in a corporation, that don't see their transferable skills as an asset or something that gives them the capacity to move forward quicker. And so I just want to open it up. Like, what are your thoughts on that? What would you say to a listener that was questioning their transferable skills or whether they should go for something?
I am actually working with a young lady right now who's been in the same job for 15 years. She's probably hated it for the last 7, but she doesn't think she can do anything else. So the first thing I have her do, and my mom taught me this, is to write down the things you're good at. And then if you have a job that you're looking at or something you want to do, write down the pros and cons and the what ifs. What's the worst thing that can happen? And usually the worst thing that happened, number 1, never happens. But number 2, if it does, we've already thought about it and we're ready. We're prepared. And then you just have to take the risk. And sometimes they don't work out, but more often than not, they do. They really do. Because like you said, men apply for a job just because they think they should get the job. And that's not a criticism. They don't look and say, well, I don't meet every one of those 10 bullet points of skills and traits that where women think if they don't meet all 10, they can't even apply.
Exactly.
And then surround yourself with people that will lift you up, that will say, you know, you're really good at this, because that's important. People can see you better sometimes than most of the time, better than we see ourselves.
Yeah, I love that you said that, because even like taking that little drip from imposter syndrome that you said before, as women, when we don't add a little bit of risk, especially into our careers, we're not growing. And it is in that growth that you said, like our confidence, where you're like, oh my God, I can do that. Or that one thing that it's so applicable and also not at the same time, like me playing soccer competitively throughout my whole life, I can relate it to so much of my career. And I think especially in my younger 20s, when I was first getting into leadership positions and corporations and stuff, I kind of just iced that as if it was an experience that needed to stay in my past. And so anyway, I love that you shared all that, because I think that it gives women permission, and even men too. It's not just a woman thing, but women just suffer from it a little bit more. But whether you're a man or a woman listening to this, giving yourself permission to take that risk helps you grow. It helps you lean into your confidence. So I'm just like, yay, Teresa, I'm so happy that you went there.
And if you apply for that job, I always tell people that when you apply for a job, you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. And if it's not a fit, it doesn't mean it's your fault. It's just not a fit. And that's okay. But what powerful lessons you learn by going for interviews or opportunities, even if they don't work out. you've still learned a lot about the process. About a process.
So that leads me into the next question that I would love to ask. What is a major lesson that you learned? And we've kind of danced around some lessons, but if you had to pull forward an aha or a primary lesson, what would it be?
Oh my gosh, Becca.
I know there's so many, right?
I think my biggest lesson throughout from career-wise and even motherhood is go with your gut. Just go with your gut. We're pretty wise. And if we really listen, I just said listen to other people, but you take advice and listen to other people, but you make your own decisions. It's okay to get a lot of input from positive people. You've heard me call it my personal board of directors, people I go to for advice. Doesn't mean I have to take their advice, but it helps me think of things outside of my own bubble. But at the end of the day, and I know you meditate, I love to meditate, and some people it's prayer, whatever it is for you, just listen because you really do know what to do. And it's good to get all that input. But at the end of the day, listen to that little silent voice because it'll tell you which direction to go to. And it took me a long time to learn that lesson, to just listen to my gut.
Yeah, I love that because for me too, it's taken me a long time to truly listen to it. And sometimes I'm better at it than others. But what I will say as a lesson that I've learned too is that I love that you mentioned confidence. And we've talked about it a little bit because I feel like my confidence has increased the more I've learned to listen to that wisdom inside me. And I trust myself and I'm like, okay, this is the feeling. Once you've leaned into that feeling 2 or 3 or 4 times, you're like, oh, now I know that's the feeling I need to trust. And it's just really incredible. So again, yes. Yeah. Awesome lesson. Why are you passionate about the work that you're doing now? I mean, again, we've kind of sprinkled on some of it, but I know that you are a very passionate woman and I get inspired just being around you. So I'd love for you to share with the listeners, why are you passionate about the work that you do now? And why does it matter?
The work I do now, whether it's with corporations or individuals, and I use a lot of behavioral assessments to work with corporate clients. You mentioned Gallup Strengths, DISC, and Code Breakers, kind of a new one I've been working with. But I use those in working with companies because the more we know about ourselves, the better prepared we are to understand other people. And even when I started with the why, I had a CEO that brought in a consultant to do strengths and DISC and all that stuff on us. And it enabled our little management team to really get to know each other and work better together. So when I decided I wanted to leave the why, I knew that I wanted to take lessons I had learned and transfer those to other people because I believe if we share the mistakes we've made and the lessons we've learned, we can help other people not have to make those same mistakes. They're going to make mistakes. You're not living if you're not making a mistake. So you're going to make mistakes, but maybe you can make different ones and not the same one if you listen to somebody that's already been there, done that. So that's really what I'm passionate about is sharing the knowledge that I've gained over 30 plus years of being in the working world with other people. And I know people shared with me, starting with my mother. I can name a dozen people that have helped me through the year, whether it's parenting or career. And that's valuable to give back. So I'm really, really passionate about lifting other people, specifically women. My corporate work is not obviously with just women, but my boss lady work is with women because I think we need to surround ourselves with powerful women. And
I couldn't agree more.
Positive is the key word there.
Yes. And I just want to double click on that real fast too, because I think that as women, I know in my world of coaching, whether it's individuals or in corporations, but when I'm in the women's groups, when I first talk about support or building that network, they'll be like, well, I have my best friends or I have my family. And I'm like, yeah, but it's a little different. When you really surround yourself, even if you just start small with 2 or 3 women who really see your gifts, understand your career aspirations, understand your personal traits that are one of your unique qualities that make you special and make you shine. When you start to go sideways, and also I love women, like when I'm creating these little, like you said, your board of directors, but I also like women who see all of those things, but also have like the no BS. Well, they'll call me on my stuff and be like, Becca, why are you playing small again? What are you doing? And so I would love for you to talk about that a little bit, because I know you've seen how it's changed other women. So I'll just let you go. What do you have to say about that?
If anyone is listening here and they're not in some type of mastermind group, and it doesn't have to be where you pay somebody, it can be you gather 2 or 3 people that you respect and admire. 1 or 2 of them may be your best friends, but probably not. They don't have to be in your same industry. Just like you said, 2 or 3, and surround yourself with those people on a regular basis, whether it's once a week, once a month, once every 2 weeks, just to hold yourself and each other accountable. When you do that, accountability works magic. If I know I've got to go meet with my group, and last month I said I was going to do something, I am busting my butt to get that something done, or to come up with a really good excuse as to why I didn't.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I've been talking about writing a book for 2 years, and finally I had some people say, are you going to do this? And the same with starting my podcast. I talked about that for a while, and I finally had a friend sitting on my back porch over a glass of bourbon one night said, I'm tired of hearing you talk about it. Why don't you just do it? And it's that kind of friend/acquaintance that will push you to do the things that, again, maybe your gut's saying you can do them, but fear's holding you back. Fear holds us back.
I love that so much, because it's so true. Even Teresa and I, we've been in each other's world for maybe about 18 months now. But what was one of the first questions I asked you? Did you start writing your book?
Right, exactly.
Right? Before we went on air. Yeah.
So this year when I wrote it down, because I have a group that we set our goals together every year, and it was on my goals last year and I did nothing. So this year I hired a coach because I needed, number one, if I spend money on it, I pay attention a little more. And number two, I have to meet with her. And she's not going to meet with me unless I've turned in a chapter at least 48 hours ahead of the meeting. So I set the meeting. I probably shouldn't tell her this, but I set the meeting with her, which then forces me to get the chapter written.
I love that. I work very similar. I have another question. Since it is the Empowered Half Hour, what about what you're doing now, or what we've discussed on the podcast so far, do you think will empower other people if they really implement it or take it to heart?
Jump out and do that next thing, even if you don't think you can. And take all the tips we talked about. Listen to your gut, get advice, surround yourself with positive people, but just do it. I said to somebody one time, when I was contemplating going back to college, and I said, I'm going to be 42 by the time I graduate. And I'll never forget it. He looked at me and he said, you're going to be 42 whether you graduate or not. And I went and registered for college the next week because I was like, well, I felt kind of stupid. I was like, well, I could be 42 and still not have a college degree, or I could be 42 and have one.
Either way, I'm going to be 42. So
42. So I turned 42 with a college degree, but I needed that push. And ultimately, we have to push ourselves. When you read my bio, half those things I've done since I turned 50. I didn't get my college degree till I was 42, becoming a yoga instructor, all those things, the women's studies, I did after I turned 50. And I plan on continuing to do those kind of things. Just move, take a step forward.
I love it. And it gave me like the goosebumps from head to toe. It was like I felt that. So I hope you do too, listeners. Like, take the move. So I'm a yoga instructor also. And one of my master teachers, I was struggling with some of the curriculum and like a specific meditation we were supposed to do, and I couldn't get into it. And so about 2 weeks into it, it was a 40-day meditation. I walk up to the master teacher and I'm like, I think something's wrong with me. I can't do this meditation. I can't sit still. My mind's all over the place. And he looked at me and he said, be like Nike. And I'm like, what? He's like, sit your butt down and just do it.
Let's do it.
And like, This is similar how you had that when that gentleman told you like, hey, you're going to be 42 either way. It was for me. It was like, oh yeah, like at the end of the day, just doing it is the only way to just do it. So
one step at a time. May not be perfect, but just move one step at a time.
I love that
I always
so
tell
much.
people, my next keynote work speech I'm working on is that it's not a sprint. I've been marathons for years. So one of the things I say is you don't wake up one morning and decide to run 26.2 miles. You wake up one morning and maybe run a mile. You may even just walk the mile. But 6 months later, you can run 26.2 miles.
That's incredible.
So just start the first mile.
That's awesome.
Start the first mile. So
that's awesome. So I think that's going to be a perfect place to wrap up the interview. Although I feel like we could probably do this for like hours and just keep going. But I would love for you to share how the listeners can stay in touch with you from social media to websites. Feel free to share.
Yeah, the easiest thing is just go to Teresa, no H, Teresa Rand, RAND, teresarandconsulting.com. And you can find out all you want to find out about my business, the Boss Lady community, all of those things. And on LinkedIn, I'm just simply Teresa Rand. So between those two, you can find me anywhere else you want to find me.
That's awesome. I just want to also give Teresa a little bit of a plug. I have said like she's been in my world for 18 months. And so if you're a leader in a corporation and you're looking to hire somebody to come in either for a speaker or workshop facilitation, Teresa is excellent. I have seen her myself deliver keynote. And also, if you are a woman looking to get involved in a community, like Teresa said, I have had the honor of keynoting in her world at the Boss Lady conference and her Boss Lady community. She has some resources available too. So if you feel moved by this podcast, jump into her world. She's a good human. She's going to take good care of you. And Teresa, thank you so much for coming on the Empowered Half Hour. It's great to have you.
Thank you. Any chance to spend time with you, I will jump on it.
I'll see you.